Have you ever ignored a strange feeling because you wanted to believe everything was fine? Sometimes the smallest detail can change everything you thought you knew. A single moment, a single choice, or a single look can reveal a truth that has been hiding in plain sight. Today's emotional story is about trust, doubt, and the painful moment when suspicion turns into reality. If you enjoy real-life inspired relationship stories, emotional family drama, and unexpected plot twists, stay with me until the very end because this story takes a turn that no one saw coming. It all started on what seemed like a completely ordinary Friday evening. I came home from work expecting the same routine we had followed for years. My wife was getting ready to leave the house, saying she was meeting a few friends for dinner after work. There was nothing unusual about that. We both had our own social lives, and trust had always been the foundation of our marriage. At least, that's what I believed. As she walked past me, something felt different. It wasn't just her outfit. She had clearly put extra effort into getting ready. Her makeup was more carefully done than usual. She had chosen a dress I hadn't seen in months, and she seemed unusually nervous, checking her phone every few seconds as if she was waiting for an important message. She smiled, but it wasn't the relaxed smile I had known for years. It felt forced, almost rehearsed. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling growing in my chest. Relationships survive because of trust, not assumptions. I reminded myself that everyone deserves privacy and that jumping to conclusions could destroy something beautiful. Still, my instincts refused to stay quiet. Every small detail that evening seemed connected somehow. She avoided eye contact when I asked where they were meeting. She answered quickly before changing the subject. Then, almost without realizing it, she picked up her bag and hurried toward the door much earlier than she normally would. After she left, I stood by the window for a few moments, watching her drive away. I told myself I was overthinking everything. Maybe I was stressed from work. Maybe I was imagining problems that didn't exist. But deep down, a question kept repeating itself. Why did tonight feel so different? The next hour became one of the longest hours of my life. I tried watching television. I made coffee. I even answered a few emails I had been putting off all week. Nothing distracted me from the feeling that something wasn't right. Then my phone buzzed with a notification that made my heart skip. It wasn't from my wife. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in years, and the message contained only a single sentence. "I don't think she's where she told you she'd be." I stared at those words over and over, hoping they were some kind of mistake. There was no explanation, no evidence, no follow-up message. Just that one sentence. My hands started shaking as dozens of questions raced through my mind. Was this a cruel joke? Was someone trying to create problems in my marriage? Or had I just been handed the first clue to a truth I wasn't prepared to face? Every choice I made over the next few minutes would change the course of my life forever. I could ignore the message and pretend I had never seen it. I could call her immediately and demand answers. Or I could quietly find out the truth for myself. I never imagined that deciding to follow my instincts would uncover a chain of secrets far more complicated than simple betrayal. Before the night was over, I would question everything I believed about love, honesty, and the person I trusted most. And the shocking truth waiting for me wasn't what anyone, including me, expected. For almost 10 minutes, I sat there staring at my phone. I read the message again and again, hoping another notification would appear and explain everything. Nothing came. The silence somehow made it worse. Whoever had sent that message clearly knew something, but they had left me with only questions. I wanted to believe it was a prank, yet the uneasy feeling I had been trying to ignore all evening suddenly became impossible to dismiss. I opened my contacts and hovered over my wife's name. Calling her would have been the easiest thing to do. If everything was normal, she would answer, laugh about my worries, and I would feel embarrassed for letting my imagination get the better of me. But another part of me wondered if asking too soon would only give her time to prepare an explanation. That thought alone scared me because it wasn't like me to think that way. Instead, I replied to the mysterious message with a simple question. "Who is this?" The typing indicator never appeared. Minutes passed with no response. Whoever had contacted me seemed to disappear as quickly as they had appeared. The uncertainty was becoming harder to handle. I walked through the house, trying to calm myself. Every room held memories of the life we had built together. Family photos lined the hallway. Vacation souvenirs sat neatly on shelves. The kitchen still smelled like the coffee we had shared that morning before leaving for work. Looking around, nothing suggested that our lives were anything but ordinary. Yet that ordinary life suddenly felt fragile, as if one unanswered question could make it all fall apart. As I paced through the living room, I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to earlier. A small notebook was sitting on the side table. It wasn't unusual for my wife to leave notes or shopping lists around the house, but this one looked different. A folded page was tucked inside as if someone had been using it recently. I hesitated before opening it. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but the events of the evening had already pushed me into unfamiliar territory. Inside were only a few handwritten reminders, appointments, grocery items, and random thoughts. Then one line near the bottom caught my attention. It wasn't a name or an address. It was simply a time and a location, written without any explanation. The place wasn't where she had told me she was meeting her friends. I froze. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was an old reminder she had forgotten to erase. But when I compared the time on the note with the time she had left the house, they matched almost perfectly. At that moment, another notification lit up my phone. It wasn't from the unknown sender this time. It was from one of my wife's closest friends, and what she wrote only made the mystery even deeper. My hands shook as I opened the message. I expected it to clear everything up, but instead it made the situation even more confusing. Her friend wrote, "Hey, just wanted to let you know we had to cancel dinner tonight. Something came up for everyone. Tell her I'm sorry, and we'll plan another evening soon." I read the message twice. If dinner had been cancelled, then where was my wife going? My mind immediately jumped to the worst possible conclusion, but I forced myself to slow down. There had to be another explanation. Maybe she forgot to mention the change. Maybe she had decided to run an errand first. Maybe there was a surprise she didn't want to spoil. I wanted every one of those possibilities to be true. Still, the timing didn't add up. The note on the table, the anonymous message, and now the cancelled dinner all pointed in the same direction. None of them proved anything on their own, but together they painted a picture that was becoming harder to ignore. I sat down and thought about the last few months. Looking back, I realized there had been little changes I had brushed aside. She had started working later than usual. She kept her phone face down whenever we were together. Sometimes she smiled at messages without saying who they were from, and when I asked how her day had gone, her answers became shorter than they used to be. At the time, I had blamed stress and busy schedules. Now every memory felt different. Even then, I wasn't looking for someone to blame. I was looking for the truth. Whatever that truth turned out to be, I needed to hear it with my own ears instead of building a story in my head. Just as I made up my mind, my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a live location link from the same unknown number, followed by 6 words that made my heart race. "If you want answers, go now." I stared at the live location for several seconds without moving. My first instinct was to delete the message and pretend none of this had happened. But if I did, I knew the questions would never leave me. I grabbed my keys, locked the front door, and drove toward the address, telling myself I was simply looking for the truth, not searching for someone to blame. The drive felt longer than it really was. Every traffic light seemed to last forever, giving my mind more time to imagine every possible outcome. One moment I convinced myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. The next, I wondered whether my entire life was about to change. My emotions shifted between hope, fear, and disbelief. When I finally reached the neighborhood, I slowed down. The location pointed to a quiet street lined with small businesses and a few apartment buildings. It wasn't the restaurant my wife had mentioned earlier. I parked a short distance away and looked around carefully, unsure of what I was even expecting to find. Then I noticed her car. It was parked outside a building I didn't recognize. The lights inside were on, but the windows were covered with frosted glass, making it impossible to see who was there. People came and went from nearby stores, completely unaware that my heart was pounding harder with every passing second. I stayed inside my car for a moment, trying to think clearly. Walking in without knowing the situation could make everything worse. Walking away would mean living with unanswered questions. I checked my phone again, hoping the anonymous sender would finally explain why they had brought me here, but there were no new messages. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, the front door of the building slowly opened. Someone walked out, looked directly toward me, and paused as if they had been expecting my arrival. Before I could recognize the person's face, my phone rang again and the caller ID showed my wife's name. My phone kept ringing in my hand. I looked at my wife's name on the screen, then back at the person standing outside the building. For a second, time seemed to stop. If I answered the call, would she tell me where she really was? Or would she say something that didn't match what I was seeing with my own eyes? I finally answered. "Hey," she said, sounding calm but slightly out of breath. "Are you home?" The question caught me off guard. I hesitated for a split second before replying, "Yes, why?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "I just wanted to check in. I'll probably be a little later than I expected." Her voice sounded normal, but something felt rehearsed. Before I could ask another question, she quickly added, "I'll explain everything when I get back. Just don't wait up for dinner." The call ended. I lowered the phone slowly. My heart was racing, not because I had found proof of anything, but because nothing made sense anymore. If she believed I was at home, then who had sent me here? And why? The person outside the building glanced around as if looking for someone, then walked away without noticing me. I considered following them, but another thought stopped me. What if the building itself was the real reason I had been brought here? I looked up at the sign near the entrance. It wasn't a restaurant, a hotel, or anything I had expected. It was a private office that had already closed for the evening, according to the hours posted on the door. Yet lights were still on inside. As I stepped closer, I noticed another familiar car parked near the back of the lot. It belonged to someone I recognized immediately, my brother-in-law. That discovery hit me harder than anything else that night. He and I had always gotten along, and he had never given me a reason to doubt him. Seeing his car here raised an entirely new set of questions. Was this connected to my wife? Was it just a coincidence? Or had I stumbled into something much bigger than a misunderstanding between two people? Before I could decide what to do next, my phone buzzed again. It was another message from the unknown number. "This isn't about what you think." A second message appeared almost instantly. "If you walk through that door without knowing the whole story, you'll regret it." I stood frozen outside the entrance, staring at the glowing screen. Every answer seemed just a few steps away, yet every instinct warned me that crossing that threshold could change my life forever. I stood there for another few seconds, reading the warning over and over. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. I took a deep breath, reached for the door, and stepped inside. The hallway was quiet. Soft voices echoed from a meeting room at the end of the corridor. As I got closer, I recognized one of them immediately. It was my wife's voice. Before I could react, the door opened, and my brother-in-law looked straight at me. His eyes widened with surprise. "You weren't supposed to be here yet," he said. Those words instantly made my mind race. I looked past him and saw my wife standing beside a table covered with folders, sketches, and framed photographs. She looked shocked to see me, but not guilty. Instead, she looked disappointed that the surprise had been interrupted. "What is all this?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my wife walked toward me and gently placed a folder in my hands. Inside were plans for a community center that meant a great deal to my late father. Years earlier, he had dreamed of turning an old family property into a place where young people could learn new skills, attend workshops, and find mentors. After he passed away, that dream slowly faded away. I had often talked about finishing what he started, but life, work, and financial pressures always got in the way. "We wanted to bring his dream back," my wife said quietly. "Your brother-in-law helped organize everything. We were trying to keep it secret until your birthday. I looked around the room again. The photographs weren't evidence of hidden meetings. They were old family pictures that had been collected for a memorial display. The sketches showed renovation plans, not anything suspicious. Every strange detail from the past few weeks suddenly had a simple explanation. Relief washed over me, followed almost immediately by embarrassment. I apologized for doubting the people closest to me. My wife smiled, but I could tell the evening had been harder on her than she admitted. Trust, once shaken, takes honesty from both sides to rebuild. Just as we began talking through everything, my phone buzzed one final time. It was the anonymous number. "I told you this wasn't what you thought." Before I could reply, another message arrived. "I only wanted to make sure you showed up before the surprise was cancelled." I tried calling the number immediately, but it had already been disconnected. To this day, none of us knows who sent those messages or why they chose to stay anonymous. The mystery was never fully solved, but it reminded me that assumptions can be just as dangerous as secrets, and sometimes the biggest surprise isn't discovering the truth. It's realizing how close you came to believing the wrong story. The drive home felt completely different from the drive there. Earlier that evening, every mile had been filled with fear, doubt, and unanswered questions. Now the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It gave us both time to think about everything that had happened and how quickly a few missing pieces of information had almost convinced me that the worst was true. When we got home, we sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee, just like we had done countless times over the years. This time, though, the conversation was more honest than it had been in a long while. I admitted that I had noticed small changes in her routine but never talked about them. Instead, I had quietly collected doubts in my mind. She admitted that keeping such a big surprise secret had been more difficult than she expected. Looking back, she understood why her unusual behavior had raised questions, even though her intentions had been good. Over the next few weeks, we worked together to bring my father's dream closer to reality. Friends, relatives, and neighbors volunteered their time. My brother-in-law coordinated the renovation plans, while my wife handled the fundraising and community outreach. Watching everyone come together reminded me that the strongest relationships are built on teamwork, honesty, and the willingness to have difficult conversations before misunderstandings grow into something bigger. The mystery of the anonymous messages never completely disappeared. We asked everyone involved, but no one admitted sending them. Maybe it was someone who knew about the surprise and wanted to make sure I arrived at the right place. Maybe it was a stranger who believed they were helping in their own unusual way. Eventually, I accepted that not every question in life receives a perfect answer, and sometimes that's okay. Standing inside the completed community center a few months later, I looked at the photographs of my father hanging on the wall. Families filled the rooms with laughter, children attended their first workshops, and volunteers welcomed people through the front door. Seeing his dream become real was far more meaningful than I could have imagined. In that moment, I realized the night that began with suspicion had ended by bringing our family even closer together. If this story teaches anything, it's that trust grows through communication, not assumptions. When fear fills in the blanks, even ordinary moments can seem suspicious. Taking the time to ask honest questions, listen carefully, and give the people we love a chance to explain can change everything. Thank you for watching this emotional relationship story. If it made you think about the importance of trust, family, and second chances, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next story.